All right, hello and welcome to round 5 of January Thursday Nighter. We're very lucky to have I am Nubair back again for the final round. So, welcome, Nubair.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
So, got 8 boards tonight, 3 boards Premier, 5 boards Open. And yeah, board 1, Connor versus Ronan. Connor's actually a point ahead, so Ronan's must win to tie him up. And otherwise, Connor's pretty much coasting on his lead with this final round here. But yeah, let's take a look at all the games.
Yeah, and it's really interesting position, the current position. For instance, like Black has sacrificed an exchange, and Black has got a pawn extra or 2 pawn extra for the exchange, and it could be anyone's game. Like if Black get managed to outplay White, it could be Black's win, or if White manages to somehow get the G pawn, then he can start rolling the F pawn, and it could be White's game. So it's an interesting end game, dynamically balanced, so maybe equal right now, but it could be anyone's. Let's see how they reach this position. It was an English opening by Agam, and then it got transposed into Slav defense, one of the main lines. So this is one of the main lines. And now, okay, Black has option to play e6, can keep it in the main line of semi-Slav or capture dc4. Corner went e6, bishop g5, bishop e7, pretty much mainline stuff. Knight d7, bishop d3, queen c7 takes, and rook c1. Eyeing some knight d5 ideas if knight e4 someday.
So, getting the Carlsbad
Yes.
pawn structure.
Uh-huh. And
Classic.
usually the idea is bishop d6, knight b5, but in this case, white is not castle yet. So maybe not so correct, bishop f4, or maybe premature. Maybe castling was better as black can play bishop d6 here. For example, if you play castle, then let's say the typical move is rook e8 for black, and now bishop f4. And now suddenly there's no bishop d6 because you win a material by a typical tactic in Queen's Gambit, where you attack the queen and bishop at the same time using a pin on the c5. And something like this would have been better, and then simply white could have played h3, no knight h5, no knight e4, and this gives white a good position. But instead, he rushed with bishop f4 directly, bishop d6, and now, okay, this allows black to equalize. Okay, he's preventing knight e4, which is a good thing, but sooner or later, I think black should be able to equalize this.
So it
e4,
was Queen C7 their main line as well? Because it seemed like the Queen was kind of
not really.
vulnerable to tactics. So
Usually, you don't really play queen on first, you just simply castle, go rook e8 or b6, bishop b7. But of course, maybe Connor wanted to deviate a bit from the line because they were playing mainline stuff. Uh, and 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 yes, we all know that you should not move our major pieces unnecessarily in the opening. Of course, try to develop the minor pieces, make castle. So queen c7 is not really a, let's say, a mainline or a correct move. But let's say if you see this position after 5 moves where white has played rook c1 or rook b1, queen c2 castle, and black managed to get all these moves, then it may get transposed into something. But ideally, usually after takes, the bishop gets changed here and queen comes to e7. So the ideal place for queen is e7 or d6. But as we saw in the game, white played bishop f4 and allowed bishop d6 as well. It got transposed into something which we get in normal Queen's Gambit. Declined. So takes. And now black is absolutely fine. In fact, even better because white has got this isolated queen pawn. And simply bishop e6, bishop d5 would give a black a good position, or let's say bishop g4. It will put enough pressure on the d4 pawn. So e4 is not so correct. Like maybe he can try knight e5 and, for instance, knight g6, something like f4, trying to play queen f2, and try to jump some attack on king side. But uh, e4 not so good as it leaves white with IQP.
and they don't really have the pieces left to. Oh, especially if you got the IQP here. This is interesting. So yeah, what do you think about? What do you want to fix? What about pawn takes to fix the structure? I mean, is that going to run into tactics or?
Yeah, both moves are possible. Yes, white should try to improve his pawn structure. But what I'm bothered or wondering is why he's giving this pawn for free. Like irrespective of whatever you capture, the a2 hangs,
Hmm.
and I don't see a way in which white is recovering the pawn back. Like it just bishop a2 and okay, maybe rook a1 he wanted. Okay, bishop, this is also hanging, so no d5, time for d5. And simply bishop gets to the rim position, and this is still a weakness. And let's say even if someday you play this, he can play a6. I mean, of course, he can take first, there's knight e6. This just looks winning for black to me. So he goes knight e5, and still there's knight e6, I believe, and you lose another pawn. So Kona was completely two pawns up, or healthy pawns up, two healthy pawns up. Okay, it's completely going perfect for him. Again, there's no need to play knight b5 yet because it's, for example, if you play rook a7, there's knight b5. And apart from that, you are threatening a checkmate. So some other move which improves the position would have been better. For example, knight e2 or rook e2 even. This would have been even stronger. Attacking the b2 pawn, you can never take on e2. It's simply knight e2 is coming, and you black is winning a piece. This would have been decisive on the spot. Though other moves like g6, h5, anything like just trying to make double or b5, b4 ideas also wins for black. But okay, he went knight b5,
That's that's
which you
interesting to me because I can see why maybe that didn't come to him. He's up 2 pawns. You're up 2 pawns. You want to play safe. You don't think maybe you don't think about throwing an exchange sack in like why I'm up 2 pawns, but that's how you can really close out some games. Just be ruthless. You still got to calculate your forcing moves, even when you're up 2 clean pawns. And if
exactly. He's trying to keep it simple, and he grabs another pawn, forcing. Okay, this time white also gets a pawn, but we can simply see the rooks are in the open file and black is in the driver's seat. But then how did he lose exchange? Okay, and then b3, a6, so that he can improve his knight further. So rook d1 is played. Knight c3, okay, rook d3. Knight d5, okay, everything looks perfect. Did he allow knight e3? Knight d6, rook e7, knight f5. And now if I play rook e5, what's wrong? Nothing is wrong. Rook g3 and some pressure here.
got it.
Okay, g6, no worries. And now this is something to be worried about because if you go back, white will still take the pawn. So now maybe simply rook b2 needs to be played, which was played in the game. Excellent. And this is how blunted happened in chess.
Ouch.
You try to play like so safe and like
Oh
during the
yeah.
game we saw only corner was trying to play logical and safe to getting the material. And at some point you just try to play so safe that you land into a knight spokes like this. And in chess, as they say, it's very easy to blunder knight coming back. Like this was a threat. So mind only things like this, okay, we are gonna capture this pawn, and this is how the blunder happened.
Yeah. Well, I am noticing he only spent 1 minute on that move. And he's only spent 13 minutes on the game. So you know, Connor does see all this stuff. He sees it all, but then I think he does have this weakness. I feel like where he doesn't double check. You know, he sees it all, but like you got all this time, you got all the time in the world to double check, and yeah. So then can't hang the knight fork. I mean, I would myself, but uh,
I would say
confident
very
calcs are nice, but you got to double check.
absolutely. I mean, when we play classical chess, I mean that's where the time is there. You check your lines, double check the lines, check if there are any tactics or some attacks forthcoming in or double attack coming in. If you miss such things, then you land into something like this. Now black was completely winning, and now white is back in the game. But I really like the way Agam, made this. Like he farmed this blunder, I would say. Like he was every last, if you see, okay, he was always losing, completely losing, but he was trying to fight, give some threats continuously, harass the rook, put some pressure,
Yeah,
attack something. And last 4 5 moves he was attacking continuously I mean something like either this rook, sometimes the other rooks, and then this rook, then this pawn, and then in the end these two pawns. So when you attack or give threats so many times, the chances of making mistakes or blunder increases psychologically. And and he got material.
And he's spending, and Ronan was spending his time. So even though he's in a dead loss position, he's spending time looking for resources. So that's, I would say, admirable and how you should be focused in your classical game. But we'll see here. I feel like Connor's still gonna have pretty good chances.
Yeah, and after winning the exchange, now Agam started playing very passive, just like Connor was doing, and now Connor starts playing active. So still, like it could be Connor's game or anyone's game. It depends now how they play this. For example, he could have just gone back and try to check from behind, and maybe could have just forced draw if he wants to make a draw. But rook h1, maybe he was worried about this rook coming like this.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, he needs to worry about this pawn going forward. Because if the pawn starts rolling, it will be really difficult for him. A5 and now rook h5. I don't understand what okay, he wants rook f4, but simply if he moves king somewhere, or let's say king g6, what he wants. He cannot play this. This hangs.
Maybe
Then he'll go back.
I was thinking about rook
Maybe
takes pawn.
possible.
Maybe he wanted rook takes pawn in his mind, but that's silly. Um,
That loses actually. So if you try to be like this, there's just this trick and you lose the pawn.
mm-hmm.
And you cannot really play this because takes and simply
Yeah,
king f5 and or even b5 I think wins on the board because the king is out of the square. So he needs to, I believe. Okay, king g6. I think this happened in the game. They did play king g6 and get back to live. So this is the position. Yeah, and now Corner is thinking to go back or farm something else because he also has moves like rook d1. But okay, rook d1 could be another blunder. But wait a sec. The fun part is rook d1 is another where black is trying to farm a blunder here. And after rook f4, there's this move. And now you cannot save both the rooks. This could be another interesting setup for the blunder. Like here, white sets a trap, take rook f4, but in reality, he's not threatening anything. Because after rook f4, and both the rooks are hanging. You don't have rook h4. I mean, black just captures. So he can actually play rook d1, threatening something like this, and then some checks and king g4 coming in. So maybe he's thinking about rook d1 or to just play king f6.
yeah, I like rook d1. That makes a lot of sense, especially if you want to try to push for a win. Although, if you think about it too, I mean, Connor objectively he should be fine with the draw based on the tournament situation. There's also,
Mhm.
I think there's a, I think there's a significant prize this month as well. I believe Nathan put up a $200 prize. Not 100% certain on that, but so you know, draw wins the tournament, but knowing
Mhm.
Connor, he wants to win too. He likes to play for the win
Ye-
every week.
Yeah, and I believe he must be also gaining some rating points if he wins, right?
Yeah, he Connor's he's pushing. Um, he's 2100 plus, and Ronan's in the 1900s somewhere. So
So he would like to gain some points. And I mean, of course, I mean, winning is more important. But I mean, winning the tournament is more important. But at the same time, if you win the last round and win the tournament, then the feeling is just something different. I mean, everything falls in the right place. Like if you win the last round and win a tournament, then it's very nice feeling. Instead of making, I mean, you make a draw and win, you still win, but
yeah,
winning a
yeah,
tournament is something a great
yeah.
feeling. Okay, so he just defends. All right, let's move to the next game because this is going to White is going to take some time here. We have we're playing against Robert this in the final round, and the position looks crazy, or maybe it's mating 2 or 3. I don't know what's really happening here. I think it's mating 3, mating 2, sorry. So King F3, Queen G4, and this looks like a mate, and I think Robert is winning this one. However, let's see this from beginning to understand.
Looks like a
E4.
crazy game. Looks like he sacked all his pieces in this game at some point.
Have you seen this move before?
No, this is a very Robert move. So we know every week we're gonna get something unique with Robert. So he's not disappointing us this week. But no, I have not. familiar with myself. I do play Open Sicilian, so I should probably brush up on this because I would be totally unprepared.
Let me be honest, I'm playing chess for now 20 years. I'm pretty sure this is a novelty here. Like even in online game, no one can mouse flip like this. F6 is possible maybe, but F5, I mean, I'm pretty sure this has to be novelty.
You know, he's
I
just
mean,
he's Rajabov
and it's
style.
not that
You know,
bad. Like, yeah, you capture and you white get black gets central control. So interesting. But then he doesn't play knight d5. He finds knight h6.
so knight
How
h6,
do you defend that?
trying to recapture the pawn with the knight and get some interesting dynamics to start. And yeah, okay. So what if you play bishop d3, just trying to defend it?
Yeah, that's what the normal human would have done.
And
But
maybe
then,
now maybe play c3, and so you got a square for your bishop to drop back. And
yes, bishop d3, d5, c3, and okay, c4, we have got bishop c2. But no, this is something interesting, rather crazy game. White plays knight h4.
yeah, Nathan's like, you're not gonna out
In
crazy
what
me,
rank?
Robert.
And okay, like Robert like took 5 minutes to play knight h4, while Nathan took another 16, 17 minutes to play knight h4. So he has thought something. e5. Now, simply attacking the knight, he could have played e6, but no, he went for e5, allowing queen h5 check, knight f7 back. There is no knight g6, guys. Do not blunder like this. You will lose your queen. Knight f3. And then he does not defend the e5 pawn as well. Normal guy could have played queen f6 or something else, but bishop e7 sacrificing another pawn because he just wants to castle. And I think the idea is knight f7, rook f7, bishop c4, simply d5. So makes sense. Knight c3, d5 anyways.
It's a big
Again
center.
allowing knight e5.
Yeah, so I guess
But
you did get him to play capture away from the center, and now you're trying to take over the center.
and now after knight c6, there's knight e5. Maybe he did not wanted to sacrifice the fourth pawn or third pawn. I don't know how many pawns he has sacrificed. He has got lost two for sure, and this is the third one, I guess. But wait a sec, he's losing the fourth one as well. So maybe he didn't. Maybe Robert felt it's too much, and he decided to play another great move, king f8.
Yeah, look at Robert's time usage. He's not calculating too much here. He's definitely
Yeah,
playing intuitively.
yeah. He just wanted to unpin this, and now the e5 pawn is not hanging anymore. So he comes back to e2. Now g6, another sacrifice. Takes, and rook g8. And now if you play queen g4, there's a bishop g4. Queen h5, there's bishop g4, and you can go h7, or you can go queen h7 directly. But then you land into rook g7, and the problem is the queen is getting trapped. After queen h5, there's a bishop g4, and there's no space for queen. So Nathan came up with knight e5.
You can see Nathan's
And
been
now I'm just trying
thinking.
to calculate.
He's already down to 17 minutes, so he's been thinking throughout this game to really try to capitalize to the max.
Believe it or not, it's moved 12, and White has spent 1 hour 15 minutes till this point. While Robert has just spent 7 minutes to get the queen.
Yeah, so maybe we don't have to criticize Robert too much then, because maybe he's doing a good amount of thinking on Nathan's time if he's been tanking this much.
Yeah, as I said, f5 was just too strong, a creative novelty for whoever to handle.
Yeah, well then,
He
I
lost
mean,
his queen
he's
on move 12.
but
Like,
you know, if you don't know what you're doing though, why try to max punish with knight h4? Why not? Yeah, just play safe and solid.
there was just no other way to get,
Yeah,
uh,
but they wanted an interesting game. They want an interesting chess. They want a game for the history books. So I think both sides are signing up for it. But yeah,
and for sure, this game goes into the history box. One of the most creative games of 2025 is already here.
yeah, this is like
And
this is looking interesting because this is quite the material imbalance. What's the actual material imbalance right now? We have queen for rook. Okay.
Um, so white has got rook and 4 pawns. So technically we can say like 5 plus 4, 9 equals to 9, but no.
Yeah.
It's not like that. This rook is, if the once the move rook comes here or the knight comes here, attacks the pieces, it's going to be game over. But if somehow white manages to exchange pieces or even all the minor pieces, then maybe white has some drawing chances. But technically, black is
So
just winning all the time.
so where did this go? Where did this go totally wrong? Because it feels like
Yeah,
it.
here, like he could have accepted the sacrifices. I mean, he would have just captured the material directly, like 95 was coming, so he could have just captured 95 and continued the game like this, like even for instance, takes. You don't have to capture this knight. This is not so great. Just come back, and maybe he could have continued like this. And this was just a waste, like bishop b5, bishop b2. But the main move where he lost or Robert made a comeback in the game is this g6. This was brilliant. Like it seems like white is winning a pawn in the beginning, but this actually traps white's queen by force.
Got it. So
In
just
fact,
got the
there
queen
was
trapped,
also,
but
I
not
believe,
obvious.
this also traps the queen. Not yet. Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah. So is there any way to save the queen?
I mean, you can save the queen, but then you have to give
Get the piece.
another piece. I'm not sure whether like black will immediately play e4 because he can also play knight c6 and still the threat is there. Knight b4 is another threat. Like you cannot really play queen e3, d4 is there. You don't have any checks or something.
Do
You
you?
cannot move your knight. This is the only square. So it really feels awkward. I mean, at least here to make a move from white. Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. The d5 pawn is hanging, right? Um, so maybe he has to go e4 and maybe white is still slightly better here because he has got now 4 pawns and his king is pretty safe compared to the black's open king. So and black cannot really take because takes and then some instant threat is there. So he must capture like this. And now it's a wise choice to play queen f3 or bishop f3. Even this is interesting as there's a bishop c4 coming next. And if you play bishop e6, then you lose the b7. So maybe queen d3 was the way in which Hassan could have continued, but then decided to sacrifice the queen. And and okay, if he gets bishop here, maybe it's fine, but it's really hard because when you try to play like this, you lose the b2 pawn. You cannot really play b3, rook b1, bishop b2 because it's gonna take 3 moves. And there are threats like knight d4 coming in. Maybe c3 d4 sacrifice or something like that was necessary. Okay, well, black white just kept on playing passively, and Robert kept on playing active chess, and somehow I think he got pieces into the game, just preventing this. And there's no knight c4, guys. Queen d4 check is there, and the bishop hangs. I mean, the knight hangs. Okay, you get the knight, but then you end up losing one by one all the pawns. So threatening knight c4 now. And it's too late because now there's simply rook g2 hanging if you move the knight. And once the weakness has been created, okay, it's gone. The point is very simple. If you capture queen g3, and this can be done by this, and if you go king h1, he'll capture all the pawns as well, and maybe simply bring the bishop next to get to checkmate white.
Opposite color bishops definitely helping that queen out.
Yeah. So he played king f2, just expand. So now here, technically, if we see, white has got the rook and knight and 2 pawns. So this material is enough usually to fight against a queen. But the problem is the king is too exposed, and bishop f3 threat is coming, which is very, very dangerous to defend. So I don't know how to defend this exactly. He needs to he needs to get the bishop on this diagonal, as I said. If he does not get the bishop there, it's almost game over. And that's what happened, I believe. Bishop e3, and he went bishop a6. So he wanted to. Robert has different ideas as always. He wants to eliminate the knight, and then maybe go queen h2. This, okay, f4 and e4. Okay, he did not capture the e4 pawn. Could have captured because that was also very, very strong, in my opinion. He went queen h5 as this is also unstoppable. And okay, he just checkmated. Or he resigned after queen h4, I believe.
Wow, that's a powerful attack by Robert, and very interesting game. Nice dynamics by Nathan too, trying to attempt to punish, but just happened to get that queen traps. And
I would
probably,
say great game. Great game by, of course, Robert. And I also, the equal credit goes to Nathan because he also played entertaining chess, entertaining sacrifices, and ideas like knight h4, and those were really good. It's pity that after this he could not handle the situation or evaluate it properly. After rook g needs to come back and not to sacrifice queen and just take the d5 pawn and play with the 4 pawns against a piece. I would have been different story. But as of now, Robert gets rewarded for his brave play or interesting chess.
yeah, both sides pulled out their paintbrushes, wanted to be artists tonight. So not too many technicians in the house for this board, but let's see
Mhm.
uh, let's see if people played any just as enterprising or more conservative on the next board.
Sure. So next board it was Basil playing against ED and started with E4, Sicilian defense. Nice draw for Rosolimo. Okay, we have Rosolimo.
The Moscow.
Moscow takes C4, knight F6, knight C3, E6, and okay, pretty much Sicilian stuff.
It kind of looks
Bishop
almost. It
E6.
looks like Maraxi.
Yeah, but now the bishops are out, so it's much better version for white, I would say, because usually the bishop is bad on e2 and the bishop is on b7, attacking always e4, forcing white to play something like f3, creating weaknesses on the diagonal. But still, I believe there was a queen c7. I mean, it was he could have just got b3, bishop b2, or something like this done before. As here, I could see maybe there's a queen c7 possibility. And the problem is after b3, there's a b5. I'm not sure how great is this, but because there's knight d5 ideas at some point, takes. Knight d5, we have got f4, king d8 is not possible. For bishop e7, you have got knight f5. And some problems out there, can play knight d5, but then again f4, knight g7 ideas. And you never know what's really happening in such kind of positions. So something like this would have been possible, but okay, AD simply decided to play bishop e7, saying no to all this. And maybe here he could have tried queen to 7 because this is the best time, I believe. There's no other way to save the pawn. You must play b3 and now simply b5, winning a pawn here. Or at least black getting a comfortable position. There's no knight d5 anymore. But instead he just played knight d5 and maybe b3, b5 was the idea. Rook d1 was playing the game, giving or sacrificing the c4 pawn directly. And okay, he gets a pawn. Almost winning a
Uh,
position as black.
just curious with the Queen C7, is there ever can you just give the pawn with like Rook C1 and Queen takes C4 and try Knight D5?
Yes. So here that's a queen c7
Just
or
play
rook
Rook.
c1. So for queen c4, yes, we do have knight d5 here. There's no queen e2 because rook c8 is a check, and then you capture the queen through bishop d8. So yes, but let's say castle, and now you want to play bishop, right?
Um,
Or still maybe there's no threat because after knight
yeah,
d5,
I
queen
kind
into
of
knight e7,
maybe now I want to play F4
knight 4, yeah, maybe possible.
because I basically just want him to take it. You know, I
And then
want I
maybe
want
at
I
some
wanted
point
to
you
keep
can
trying to
just
trap him to say here's it's a free pawn. Don't worry about it, bro.
yeah, and now maybe black is threatening, so at the end you can play b3 and And definitely it's much better version for white than compared to the game. And maybe that's why knight e5 is more accurate or was played in the game, because now you are threatening knight c4 straightforward, and rook c1 has no impact on knight c4. And if you play b3, yes, white has gotten black has got b5. And I was wondering about this thing, like you play b3, then he plays b5, and then there's some kind of f4. But I believe knight g4 is good enough here to get the job done, as it attacks both the weaknesses. And you cannot really play more like bishop d2, because then there's a queen b6 coming in. e5 also, I think, not a problem, because takes knight e5, and still there is no knight e6 or anything. If you cannot move the bishop, d4 hangs.
Well, in this specific variation, where white's maybe missing their light square bishop, if it was on e2 with the queen battery on d1, maybe it couldn't play knight g4.
Yeah, that's why it's important to follow your opponent. For example, in this game, okay, you got the bishop got traded, and after this point, like, okay, now he's trying to build up some pressure here. So you need to just play b3 as quick as possible. And or maybe you can castle and get b3 at some point, but still b3, b5 was coming. So I think this is the position where you need to play b3 first, so that you don't land into this. If rook's here or something, okay, just bishop b2, and okay, next move you castle. And if your opponent plays something like queen f5, now you have got two options. You play bishop d2 or queen d2. Maybe even queen d2 is absolutely fine. And then you castle, queen bishop b2, and okay, you have got a good position to play on. But instead, white did not pay attention, but made a normal move, and now it was alert to attack the weakness. I don't know then why I did not play knight e5 here. Maybe as we were discussing, some kind of f4 is strong here, as there's no knight g4 attack on e3. But still there was a queen b6, I believe, and some serious problems here for white. Bishop e3, knight g4. Yeah, looks good for black. But okay, he decided to play bishop e7 first, safety first. And then he played this. He got a pawn in a good position to play on. Even like this, he can do.
So so black just won a pawn for no good reason, or why didn't he play
Yeah, I
b?
mean, he really played well. He outplayed Basil.
Why
Let's put
couldn't
it like this.
why couldn't he play b3 to protect his pawn?
Yeah, he could have done b3 at the time of castling, but maybe Basil was on
But
autopilot mode and just castle.
I guess just right leading up to the moment he won it, it was just impossible to defend at that point, or if you just back up just a couple moves
Mhm.
before he took the knight, before he played knight takes c4, there was no way to defend the move before.
Yeah, so I think here only you need to play b3. After this, I think it's almost gone. Or because b5 is coming, you cannot really play b3. You need to find some counter way on f4, f5 or something. But and the only typical idea is this knight d5 break, which is not working in knight d5. If in queen g7, maybe it's working in some lines, but in knight d5 line, I don't see it's working. So okay, after bishop e7, maybe again you could have tried to play b3 here. This was the last chance, I believe. Or
And so
you don't need
if
to play b3 always. You can also play bishop d2, for instance. And if you play knight e5, you play b3. The idea is to guard the knight this time. So if b5, you just simply capture on b5. But as
but
we say, the bishop is not ideally placed on d2.
so why can't you go bishop b2? Oh, I guess because you haven't played b3 yet. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, that is why it's recommended to play b3 directly and just transfer the bishop to the right diagonal. So what we learned from this is castling is not always the right move or the best move.
But then
Sometimes you need to think about development of other pieces as well.
and then in the specific position when he was right after he played 95, if he played b3, he would have played b5, or
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, instead of rook d1, if he played b3, b5 was the answer. Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, capture, this knight c4 is annoying.
And just knight c3 is a really vulnerable piece in general, kind of in the Maraxi. I mean, usually against bishop g7, but here against rook c8. It's tactics hit that piece, so you want to get rook c1 in place as soon as possible. A lot of times too. But
Absolutely.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I play
So
Monoxy myself just against Accelerated Dragon and Khan. But it's always interesting to see some concepts.
and here, yeah, and here, uh, AD had chance to maybe just get b5, b4, or try to keep the game going with some pressure on the king because the king is really weak. But then he decided to keep it simple, just try to exchange queens because he's an upper pawn, makes sense. And then, and then I don't know why he's going back. He could have maybe continued some active play with this because after this he had got here. But then he decided to play safe. And now Bassett started to play active chess. And suddenly the activity of black is is not there just like he needs to again reroute his pieces, but now the pawn hangs, even maybe g4, g5. Now white will try to get. Okay, he does improve his knight, but then oops. Now he has to go to f2. Luckily there's no knight d3, knight g4, king g1. And black somehow ended up achieving this h3 hook here, but without queens. Still it's fine. But I don't know how this knight is going to improve further. Again, this could be done. He plays bishop f6, harassing those people on the diagonal. Now he needs to play knight f4 at some point. Here goes knight d4, and now we could see the weaknesses. It speak for themselves very soon. You cannot really play rook c2, there's knight e3 fork. And if you go like this, it's pity.
Chess speaks for itself, and so do weaknesses.
Like just simply check. You cannot go here, this hangs, you go there, the h2 hangs. And okay, you can capture, go back up to maybe just capture and go knight g4 as well. Looks pretty good. Or black can just keep the position like this and try to make double as well. Pretty good position for black, I believe.
So where did this first
But
go? Where did this first go? I mean, besides the b3 issue and dropping the pawn, did White have any big misses here in trying to organize a comeback? Because it's looking pretty overwhelming for Black at this point.
not really, I believe. Because after that, AD really played well. He kind of outplayed uh, Basil. But here, okay, it was a little slip from AD. Takes F5, he went back. And now after this, like, okay, knight e5 check is coming, but you don't really need to worry so much about it. Like, for example, you can try to, capture or open up the G file and try to do something here, some business there. Because he had simply allowed knight G5 and then even H3 and G4 to come in. So maybe he could have just played knight E2, knight F4 ideas. And okay, I understand there's rook C1 coming and you cannot play rook C1 because knight D3. But okay, you have to look for some counterways or rook C1, bishop C1 and try to do something on the diagonal of bishop F4. Because anyway, you control the squares on the C file.
And
So
one
this
more
was his
question.
chance to
See,
play,
you
continue
said
playing
knight f8
actively.
was a mistake. What was the improvement there? I think I missed that.
Maybe just 92 trying to improve pieces, or even here just try to play 92.
But for Eddie, when he played f5 against knight g6 and he played knight f8, what was the improvement instead of knight f8?
Maybe 95 because
Just
for takes
centralized.
he can take on, yeah, centralize, and for he has got this thing. I understand the E6 hangs, but then okay, you're just playing for the activity. Capture, capture, and the pieces are not really. I mean, you can play this move, but even if I go back, this threat is just too much to defend, and you cannot capture this side as well. And moves like rook f5 have got some tactical problems. I mean, there are also simple g6, but it's not that easy to deal with such moves. Even 96, 93 could be an annoying thing.
So yeah, I guess we see another sample of along the exchange stack in the other game. Maybe here Eddie's up a pawn. He just wants to play safe. Let's go back knight f8. But why get into these dynamics with 95? But at the same time, that's really how you can kind of take your game to the next level. Is even when you're up material, to play the best moves, even if it ends up with some dynamics that could end up double edged. But he's trying to just convert his extra pawn, so I can see that too, and it is working out for him. But that's
Yeah,
interesting.
so technical game, let's say a technical game by AD so far, and I think he's up also up on time, so probably he'll convert. Maybe he's just wondering how to go forward to do some tactical things, or maybe trying to find some way in which he can somehow get his rook inside. But at least he can win a pawn here. He's thinking, let him think. Let's go to the next board, maybe in open section.
Perfect. We got Thomas against Jeremy, and I believe Jeremy is leading the tournament in the open section, similar manner to Connor. Um, so yeah,
And yeah, and I believe it's first board of open section. It was opened with d4 and some Bobo Indian defense here. Takes. Pretty much mainline stuff. With slightly better position for white. Okay, a3. Pre-match. The right way is to go b3, a3, and then you try to play b4. If you play a3 directly, then there's a4 coming in, and after knight c5, black is usually having a good position or comfortable game. This is a
yeah.
mistake. Now you allow to go.
Jeremy was 4 out of 4 coming into this round, so he's having an excellent tournament this month.
Uh-huh. If you could have played a4 probably could have also got 4 out of 5 because then it's a positional damage in white's position and very comfortable game for black. But then he allowed this, and now okay, it's white is simply better here. c5, c6 next coming. Needs to play something, some kind of a c6 or c5 very soon for black, otherwise it will be game over. He captures, goes knight b8.
Have you?
Maybe he wants this, but I mean, there are so many good moves for white. I don't see like how he's gonna survive this, but he survived. Let's see how. So c5 takes, and he found the c6 way. But still, I believe there's a rook a7 coming, knight a5 coming. How do you save this? Like rook a7 and you play queen c7, queen c8. There's knight a5, the bishop is trapped. Or you have to play bishop a6, then I'll simply capture here and some threats. Knight e5 would also be hanging. But instead, he played knight a5, which allowed black to get bishop 8. But there's knight c4 after that as well. But then you can capture and get some counterplay, I believe. But instead, Thomas did not go for all this. Knight c4 is an interesting option here because after takes, there's rook 8. Takes. Okay, takes, so maybe knight d6. And bishop c6, there's knight e5, so black needs to capture this one. Rook 8 takes is there. So now there are two ways. Either you play knight e5 or you try to play rook takes a8 and captures. That looks fine for white, so black, so maybe knight e5. And bishop d5. Now this is better for, of course, this is better for white with the active knights. Maybe simply rook d1 is also possible.
The c pawn looks a little scary too.
Yeah, but I mean, if you start with rook a7, you are clearly better because then the bishop has just no spots. You cannot really go queen c8, queen here, knight a5 is coming. And if you go bishop a8, now okay, you have got two options again. You can play this move or even caption. Maybe just play rook a8. Putting
Yeah.
additional, but maybe he can repeat, yeah.
One interesting note on Jeremy coming in 4-0 is there actually is, I think, a reason to play for a win if you're 4-0 or to go for 5-0 because I think in US chess rating system, if you get all wins in your tournament, no draws, they
You
give
get
you
bonus, right?
you get some sort of bonus. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how it works, but you can just get like a huge amount of points from that tournament if you do that. So, and I think it's meant to like catch people up who are way underrated and just crushing people, but you can, even if that's not you and you're not an underrated kid, you can take advantage of that bonus just by going for the win in the final round. But no, 4.5 out of 5 is definitely amazing and solid win for the tournament as well. And I'm sure he's going to gain a ton of rating no matter what. But I did want to point out that if you ever find yourself in that situation, it is worth at least giving it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, one must give the shot, and it's a really great rule. Like I really like it, and I think it could be implemented everywhere in the world because scoring 100% is something like something unique and should get rewarded. Like you fight all games and you try to beat every single one. And nowadays this is really missing. Like we rarely see people winning tournaments with 100% score. So this has to be rewarded, and it's really nice gesture uh, by, let's say, the organizers or sponsor or whoever it could be. But it's really good for the players as well as the spectators because we see a fighting games even in the last round instead of dry draws. So
Yep, and that's a U.S. chess rule, so that's just
uh,
nothing specific to our tournament, but specific to our just national federation.
yeah, it's really a good step or great decision or to have this rule. I think FIDE should also implement this as soon as possible. Uh, Knight b3 takes knight b8. And again, as I said, I was saying rook a7 was better to implement at some point because you don't really trap your rook. You can just play rook a7, queen c8, and c5, knight a6, you have got c6. And for this, you have got simply queen c4, trapping the knight. But instead, he went like this, and this allowed Black to simplify up to a certain extent. It did find some ideas with queen c7, but this is not threatening anything. You can just capture. And I believe everything got traded here. Black was up a pawn, but somehow he lost the d5 pawn. Let's see how. So now knight b6 is coming. So knight d7, bishop e4 is coming, which means he's losing the pawn very soon. Okay, so it was very nice. Like Black really handled it well. So here, okay, he was alert with the tactical possibilities. He got a pawn. Now this pawn is hanging. So look how he defends it. C plays knight e4, blocks it. Then rook d4, threatening some kind of a knight c4, knight b6 ideas. So he plays f6. Because knight d7 is not possible. This hanging knight cannot be improved further. And even this will end into knight d7, knight b6 at some point. So f6, forcing the knight to go to some bad square. And then he plays knight c3, defending the pawn and also threatening this. Now white defends it. And now he improves the knight, preventing knight b6. So white goes knight e3, attacking the pawn. Now again, knight e4 is not possible because of this. So he goes d4, taking advantage of the fact that there's a fork here. Now white must capture or play this move first, knight c2, because capture will lead into a blunder as a5 is hanging. Now capture, and rook a8. Again, you cannot really capture this, or you can capture. Rook a5, rook d7. Now maybe he could have captured here. Takes, or is there any way he could save this? So now the problem is suddenly after knight c2, the threat is knight takes d4, and there's no knight e2 fork. So this ended somehow in Hayden's favor.
Oh, hold on, I've got an idea. Go back 2 moves. What about knight e2? Well, after he plays knight e2, it's a bit hope chess. But what about playing knight e2, hoping for rook takes and pawn push?
Yeah, but the problem is just capture,
I
capture. You didn't want to
and
capture
your
this.
own. Yeah, okay,
So that's the problem.
not helping.
So Black tried to be clever throughout, but somehow it didn't work out to us then. Maybe this was the time where it was necessary to just defend the pawn instead of going for d4 tactic. And if he plays knight b6, okay, he defends the pawn, and now it's defended by three guys. So almost it's impossible to win this pawn on d5 because I don't see a way this knight on a5 attacking the d5 pawn, and also Black has got rook d8 simply. And
Yeah,
d4 is optional tactic available. So this could have been winning for Jamie.
So maybe getting a bit too fancy, but it's tempting when you see the knight for, you know, when you see
Yeah,
the tactical defenses, it just feels good. But maybe the boring defense of the pawn that keeps your bishop inactive and but it keeps your extra pawn is actually ideal.
and and very well handled by Thomas. Like he did not give up or blunder somewhere after getting so many threats. Uh, Maybe he could have captured here to keep it more simpler. Even knight c6, now some kind of rook a2, I was wondering, but maybe it's fine because he has got knight d4 as well.
Yeah, this
And okay, they just trade off pieces and call the day off.
I feel like this had to be a stressful game for both players. You know, they both got both knights jumping around everywhere. We got back rank threats. You know, it's like the whole game you got to be worried about am I blundering something to these tricky knights.
Sure, definitely.
You know, I wouldn't be comfortable on either side of this game. I'd be like, oh man, I need more control over my game. Give me a bishop pair or something.
But it was a good game. Like apart from this strategical mistake, I think it was an interesting mistake. It was an interesting game. We could have played a4. Otherwise, it was a good game.
Yeah, okay, and that's why if we back up for one move here, this is why you usually play b3, then a3, then b4, just to prevent that
Exactly.
a4 resource.
Yeah, just try to go step by step. You play b3, then a3, and then the pawn goes second two squares. Do not try to jump directly because then you would be just never, never be able to do that thing because we have got 10%.
Yep. So the
Okay,
a4
so
clamp, big strategic idea. So that's a
mhm.
good learning lesson there.
Let's move to the next board. And that is, I think, Scott versus Steven, which also ended in a draw. Let's see from the beginning to understand. It was an Mediterranean.
All right.
Yeah, pretty much one of the main lines. Or after bishop g5, it's a sideline, but okay.
Yeah, I feel like as black though, I'm always comfortable playing against 4 knight f3
Yeah, I saw this.
because it feels like white's major plan is always f3, e4, e5, or that's the plan that rolls me over. So if they're playing knight f3, I know I'm gonna get to play around e4, and I'm happy.
Yeah, that's why this idea is not so good. Maybe white can try queen c2 or simply e3, bishop d3 lines. Bishop g5 buys nothing. There's simply c5, d5 coming next. And white still needs to develop his piece as castle. So usually gets a comfortable position. And here you have to take like this. But instead he went for queen d4, which is still surprising because you don't really want to capture here as white. Queen d3, e5, and now this is something like wants. And now e4 is returned. There is no knight d5. It's a pin. White's blacking behind in development. He gets e4.
Yeah, I feel like if
But
black
again,
if black gets e5, e4, and in the Nimza, it's pretty. Something's gone wrong for white.
yeah, black has got a good position, but I'm not completely sure about pushing e4 because this feels like a little bit over pushing. Now the problem is either you have to play g5 to defend the pawn or capture the knight. Both the cases is not great because white has not played e3, so you are losing a tempo here. Also, it's not forced to take bc3, so you buy literally nothing after taking. White improves its pieces and threatens to win something on f6 and win e4 eventually. And even if you have to defend something, you can just capture and capture here at some point. So not really sure about pushing it now. Maybe you could have played d6, bishop g4, and simply or rook e8, let's say, planning e4. So for me, this e4 is a bit premature unless some nd4 e3 or some tactical shot is coming.
I also wonder about, since that bishop's gone bishop g5, bishop h4, it feels like the a5 diagonal is soft. So could you ever think about ideas of queen a5 and knight e4?
Yes, you could do so someday. Like you try to play g5 and
Yeah,
then you
g5
try to
first,
play
of course.
g5.
Yeah, g5, queen a5. Yeah, is what I'm just thinking about like the four bishop g5 variations of Nimzo, which obviously play bishop
But
g5 a little
after,
bit later, but this might be a bit different.
yes, it's a typical idea, and it's quite possible many times. But I think nowadays, recently world champion just captured like this against Anish in Tata Steel, where Anish just played I mean, he went bishop g5, and after h6, maybe he could have just captured, and it was about equal. But then he went bishop h4, trapping his, I mean, and he has got pawn like this, and he just captured like this. And it was a practical sacrifice, like he was not winning, but eventually he ended up beating Anish Giri. So maybe nowadays the new trend is people don't want to get the bishop or get g5 because the world champion sacrificing a piece like this. And in practical play, yes, you have got some problems, and it's not always easy to defend the open king. Like it could easily get wrong.
So in who ended up winning that game? The person who sacked the piece.
Gukesh, yeah, this is the one who sacrificed the piece, and he beat Anish, one of the very solid guys. So, and but if
Got
you
it.
put the engine and check the sacrifice, machine may not like it. Like machine gives slightly better position for Anish, but uh, practically it worked out very well.
And but Anish did get a winning position in that game, didn't he? And then he blundered.
Yeah, he did blunder. I mean, towards the end he was winning. That the mate he missed, uh, but he was low on time. Like when the positions like this, you start burning time because you need to think about how to get rid of this, how to stop queen f5, how to defend the knight, and something like this. So
Got it. So
maybe
that
the sacrifice is good or not, or how correct it is, we never know during the game. So usually, the person who's defending burns time.
and you know
And
Anish
yes,
Anish
Bishop,
knows everything that's actually correct. So you almost have to play something incorrect to get Anish out of book.
very, very true. He's one of the best prepared players, I would say. But of course, this simply gives white a good position. The structure is completely damaged. The bishop is also very, very bad there. Let's make it trade. And a3, very good move, I believe, just preventing knight b4 ideas. Also, he could have gone c5, I believe, because then you completely ruin the bishop. What happened with this? Okay, and bishop c4 or something like this. Even bishop e2.
Yeah, and if you
Black could have played d6 and something like this because I know the pawn is bad on d6, it looks ugly, but you need to develop your pieces. You're not going to get somewhere with rook on e6.
if you did do that c5 clamp, you're pretty much intending to take either pawn if they push, right?
Yeah, of course. And also, it is interesting to see that till this point, like they have played so many crazy moves, not so normal moves, and both of them still have full time almost. Like Scott having 1 hour 29 minutes almost,
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
still
Yeah,
so
Scott,
they just wanted to play
Scott,
another
Scott,
game
what are you
today.
doing, bro? That's an hour 28. Like you playing bullet here? Like, come on, it's classical chess.
I think he just spent his time to write moves.
Yeah. You're not. It's not. You're not showing weakness by thinking. And I think some people are like, I don't. My opponent's moving fast. I want to move fast too. Like,
Guys, it's completely okay to think in a classical chess. It's not something something some inferior thing to do. Like it's I mean the time is there to think, yeah.
yeah, you win a lot more games if you tank now and then. At least more than a few minutes. You can't be even
Yeah, and there
doing.
is no carry forward in chess. Like you don't if you save time for this game, you don't get that extra time in the next one in the same event. So there's just no point like ending them with like having 1 hour on the clock and not winning the game. So maybe it's better to invest those time thinking how you could have got another extra point or a full point.
But all right, we made our.
Yeah.
We made our. I made all my time points for the night. I won't chastise any other players.
And it's very good position for white. Just simply make double, try to win the pawn, get knight to f4. Almost white has got a dream position. Like
Uh-oh, I think we're having some slight technical difficulties. Let me check our connection here. Can you hear me, Nubair?
I don't understand exactly what happened. So
All right, well, we got a little bit of lag on our call, but hopefully it will correct itself in a moment. All right, sorry about that. We're back. We just had some minor technical issues, but I think we got them resolved.
yeah, so we were here and talking about this rook, which is very, very awkward here. And now the rook cannot be moved. Like accidentally, if you touch the rook, you just lose it. And white has got everything right in this place. You cannot really play knight g6 again. Knight h5 is there, and you do have rook e6 here. But in general, this simply gives a very good position for white to play. For example, in this position, if given a chance, white would just like to go like this and win the f5 pawn. So f4 was played. Good move by Scott. G3 captures, captures. And this was not really necessary because at some point you weaken this spot. Imagine someday knight comes to e5 and black gets some counterplay. So, and this was not really a threat. So maybe you could have simply played some other move like b4, c5 and trying to win a pawn instantly. Instead, he went g3, which was not so great. And now simply king f8, king e7 comes in and then knight e5. He tried to win this pawn, but then knight comes here and the rook is attacked. Now, the problem with rook e6 is there's a bishop g4. And then if you move your rook to e5, then you lose h6. And if you move to g6, then you lose e4. So he played rook g6, which is hard to understand. Okay, I see this pawn is getting lost, but why rook g6? Maybe he didn't want rook e4, d5, rook f4 to take place. So he's moving the rook so that he can capture and get some counterplay. What do you think?
Yeah, or just aligning with the king. Maybe just feeling desperate. Hoping for rook dg8 in the future or something, but even though that's not going to help. But
Or maybe the other idea is if he captures something like this at some point.
maybe he's also thinking about at some point, even though the rook's
f5?
covering the square, but maybe he's thinking about playing knight f5, knight takes g3, and stuff like that, or rook takes g3,
Yeah.
knight takes g3 fork.
Maybe. So the first threat was to d5. He got d5. And yes, knight f5 is not coming yet. Rook g5. Okay, but he's dropping pawns, man. Like this is hanging. Okay, again, the same blundering pattern, but this time there's a check. But wait, the fun part is, okay, that's what he blundered. Look, rook h6, knight f5, he only saw till here. And after king e7, rook takes d8, there's knight d4. And you are busted. Okay, luckily the knight gets trapped, maybe. But no, it's not getting trapped. It's running actually because there's 93 check as well. So for instance, I was talking about, let's say you play rook c8 here. He captures, you go here, and then knight c1, and after capture, there's knight d3 simply. This is also there, but okay, this is not so stable square. e4 was there, but this simply wins on the spot. So he actually ended up blundering this, and things got cooked up. He got an exchange. And now what's the material evaluation? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. White has got like bishop and 2 pawns. So he's still holding probably. But he needs to play king f2, king a3 as quick as possible. He went c5. So who's playing for one this game?
I mean, I think black personally.
Yeah, but the c5 is like, why? Like you could have just played king f2, king a3 and trying to make a draw, but takes d4 and c6. I mean, it's too ambitious.
Hmm.
Okay, now again, no b4 here, a4, allowing simply rook c5, rook c2, and then this is completely winning for black.
Yeah, I mean, you want to trade pawns if you're down material, because it's going to make it harder for your opponent to convert their extra material.
Absolutely, when rook c1, rook b1 could have won the pawn, but instead he went, okay, like this, like this.
Yeah, and just to give everyone an idea of the mechanism people want to use to win rook versus bishop, you just win some pawns with your rook if you can, and then eventually you sacrifice your rook for the bishop to get a winning pawn in game. It's pretty much that simple. You know, you just you be very careful about it. You definitely don't sacrifice your rook for the bishop until you're certain the pawn in game is winning, but you can kind of maneuver around forever, and then eventually just play rook takes bishop and get your winning pawn in game. So
Absolutely, one of the simplest way to convert is just transform the advantage from one form to another. So, for example, you are exchange up, then you are just trying the advantage into a pass pawn or some asset, which wins you, which makes you win faster. So that is why it is important for white to try to keep the king active and not worry about the corner pawns. Because if you capture the leader of the game or the main pawn of the black, let's say rook h2, king e4, and if you can get this pawn, then maybe you can hold this because you got some ideas there. I know this pawn is getting lost, and after king c5, probably it just came over. So maybe this loses as well. But you need to try by keeping your king active. If you don't keep your king active like in the game, he just played king g1, rook into pawn. And after h4, I believe rook b5 was winning on the spot because after queen, it's a check and it's not a simultaneous winning. A1 checks with the queens with the check. And there's nothing much white can do about this pawn. He can play b6, but doesn't matter. You play like this, you block. You play like this. And if you play like this, you block. And this queen's in two moves. So this was winning for spot on the spot. If you would have spotted a rook takes b5. Instead, he played some rook b3.
yeah, there's an
And now
interest.
it's not really winning. The difference is after takes a4, h5. Now black does queen a1 first, but now white queens with a check. So it's a draw, or it could be white's win, depending upon what's happening after king c7, queen e5.
Yeah, and that's
So
that pawn in the middle of the, and unfortunately that pawn in the middle of the board ruins it because if you queen first and you didn't have that pawn there, you could play queen takes queen at the end. But you wish, man, if only I didn't have that extra pawn.
so this was, I think, his only chance, I believe. Rook takes b5, just do directly and win a game. But he wasted a move, and then king c7, h5, and okay, some counterplay from this side. So now he's aiming, if h6, simply go back and win a pawn. So g4 comes back to the support. And now I think still black is winning this. Don't know how this game went. Okay, this happened. And now the problem is after rook f3 against play king g2, and you cannot really leave the e file because, sorry, the third rank because the d3 hangs. So you are supposed to play this move. And now rook d2 is not so great because you lose the pawn anyways. Anyway, the pawn is under attack. And this is how. Maybe he could have played rook to a2 or something, but now it's a bit risky as well because you are allowing the h pawn to go very, very far ahead, advanced. And now if you have to play like this, it's not so great. But maybe it still works because it attacks the bishop. And if bishop remains on this diagonal, then this pawn is also winning.
And you're taking the
Bishop
bishop with
b5 is
check,
great.
so he can't just play h7 because you play rook takes bishop check and then go back.
Absolutely. Now what's happening? You play rook d8. Threat is rook h8, so king f4 is forced. You cannot really play rook g8 because then there's a king f5. So you have to go here, and now the g5 comes. And it is, I believe, pretty close to draw.
Yeah, on this rook takes bishop ideas, I want to explain one positional concept to the viewers and just see if you agree.
Okay.
So if you think about it, why are rooks better than bishops, and why are bishops are known to be slightly better than knights? And I think there's one interesting thing to think about with these. It's because a rook can almost always take a bishop. Like you get to a rook versus bishop endgame, the bishop's going to have to blockade the rook anchored by a pawn, and the rook's going to get to stare at that bishop, and the rook can choose to take the bishop any move it wants, because the rook stares at the bishop does not stare back at the rook. And
Absolutely.
so that extra option of I get to take any move I want to, it's just you have way more options with that piece than you do with the bishop, because of that dynamic. And then if you think about it, the bishop is slightly better than the knight for the same reason in most typical positions, because you think about it like you have a bishop on g7, it's staring at a knight on e5. That can be happening for that bishop will stare at the knight for 6 7 moves in a row, and you never want to take because that's your glorious defender, right? But when you want to, you can take that knight if it makes a tactic work. So you for all those moves, you get the option of playing bishop takes knight, and black does not have the option of playing knight e5. It takes bishop g7, and same kind of deal. Bishop g5 pinning, bishop h4 pinning knight f6. There's a reason they drop back bishop h4 and don't just play bishop takes f6 immediately. I mean, because they want that option. They want to be able to play bishop takes f6 when it's convenient. And so that extra optionality is kind of what inherently I think makes rooks better than bishops and bishops slightly better than knights. And there's a lot of other reasons. That's just one dynamic, but I thought that was interesting when I first learned about it.
Definitely, we can simply conclude that the rook is a double color piece. It could you can capture on light as well as dark square, but bishop has limitations. It only remains in one color, and as you said very rightly, that or simply you can the bishop rook stares at the bishop, but bishop cannot do the same. So it's a diagonal piece, and the rook simply goes horizontally and vertically, covering the maximum part of the board. That's why rooks are simply much stronger in the end games, and that's why it's better to have rook than exchange and a pawn many times when there are passed pawns, especially. But instead, black did not play actively or did not use the power of rook correctly, and somehow I think made a draw because I believe he was struggling and maybe could have lost the way he played, but somehow his king came in time to defend everything. And now again, I believe it's black who has chance to win this game. For example, he plays rook d4 here, he's still winning because the pawn is hanging. I mean, the rook bishop could be simply dominated by the rook. Now he has to go here or here. Now you can simply play rook c1 and bring a rook one. You cannot really go king here, rook c3 is there, bishop needs to leave the diagonal, then something will be hanging, and you win the game. Or simply rook c3 is also winning, I believe, because after going back, you simply go here and get a pawn. But instead, black just played rook h8, and he captured on h7, crazy. And now this is just a draw. And I think they agreed to draw at this point because this is never going to win for any side. It's a rook pawn.
Yep, and if you really want to, if you trade these two pawns on the king side off, if you really want to autopilot draw, you can just move your king to. You can even let your opponent win the pawn. Just move your king to block, and don't even think about opposition or anything. You can just get your king to b1 and turn your brain off and go king b1, king a1, king b1, king a1. They can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Or if the king is faster, you can even make draw by sitting like c1, c2. So let's move to the next game where we have a new player joining in, Mish, playing against John, which ended in John Baker's victory. Let's see. Or can you tell something about Mish? He has joined recently in the club.
Yeah, Mitch. I believe Mitch joined this month, or he might have played in this past months. But yeah, he's a new member of the club. I know he's good friends with Connor. I was just solving some puzzles with him the other night, and so we're happy to have Mitch playing. And looking forward to seeing him play a lot of games at the club and improve.
Yeah, welcome Mish to the club. And so far, he's playing reasonable moves. E1. Actively, he's playing, he's developing all his pieces. So as black. So far the game was equal, but this was not good.
Yep. On
Allowing
our
knight a5.
on our topic, bishops a little better than knights, so don't really want to allow that trade if we can avoid
Yeah,
it.
something like h3 or any other move, a3, trying to get bishop like this would have been better option. And just go d5 at some point, even like that. Also, there's a typical idea to put queen d3 first so that there's no bishop f5. And you just want to make the battery at some point. Like, okay, you need to play a3, but the idea is to just make a battery and try to put some threat with knight e5 in the future.
Yeah, and I could see him being a little averse to a3 because I was telling him about opening principles. Make the fewest pawn moves possible to get all your pieces developed. Um, so he's trying to follow opening principles. So gotta respect that still.
Yeah. And
But
John gets double bishop here. He prevents d5, or he didn't. He played c6 to prevent d5, I believe, because capture, capture, and you have the typical h2 threat. So rook d1, and now maybe he could have played bishop e6 and knight d5. Instead, he went queen c7, and allowing d5.
yeah, I was thinking about. Could he also think about playing king h1 instead of rook e1 to threaten d5, or instead of rook d1?
Yeah, but the problem is, as I said, simply
Yeah,
bishop e6 and black could play knight d5, and there's no way to defend this. Like, once you lose the bishop, like, as I used to say, white white has lost the water in the life. So now the white Lachka bishop was the uh, S2O for white, and once you lose the bishop, like then you just look for you try to control the light squares, but you cannot really control it because you are lost the command of light square.
makes sense.
So
Damage has been done.
yeah, damage has been done. And okay, just this move was necessary. And black is on the driver's seat. He can play queen c7, rook d8, rook d8, make double, up to black. Maybe transfer the bishop here, but just do this first, so that you don't have any d5 or any ways to improve this bishop or simplify for white. There's no also bishop g5 and g5. So white has got nothing absolutely. But after this, okay, he has got something to play for. Still, it's black who is better because there are two bishops, possible threats. And don't tell me he just lost his pawn. Okay, there's rook d7 and some counterplay. Okay, this also hangs. So
Deja vu from Connor's game, just people hanging a2.
and but okay, here he had at least something like to. I mean, okay, rook a1, rook a7 is also there, and also there's rook d7. So if you play like this hangs. If you try to play like this, okay, I believe still you have got rook a1 idea or rook c1 idea where you can capture and capture. And there is no really any backrank problems as the bishop guards the c1, but also rook a1 is possible. But rook c1 is built better, I believe, because you get the b7 in this.
Yeah, and as far as deja vu from other games, if you guys are tuning into the stream all the time, usually you take your ideas from master games, but you might find yourself in one of your own games and be like, oh well, I'm not going to do that because I saw that in Eddie versus Connor. So,
Yeah. By the way, what happened to that game? It's still going on.
well,
Connor.
they're not even playing tonight, but just
Yeah.
two big
So
regulars.
we'll come back to this lecture. Let's continue with Mish. Mish game where we had left it around here.
Okay.
And and okay, now at least white can have some hopes to save this. But this was not necessarily like this weakens his pawn structure further.
I'm also a bit worried. I'm
Maybe
worried about my back rank too a little bit.
maybe takes and something like knight d4 was necessary because we cannot really allow the rook to come inside or black to get active. If he gets active, it's just losing because Once the rook comes to c2, c3, anywhere, like it's just going. I mean, the pawns are just going to fall because uh, bishop and knight cannot fight against two bishops. They are simply too strong, especially when the pawns are on the both wings. It's really difficult. Black just went for rook c3 one, like,
Yeah,
and
especially
already
that
b4 is
there's no central pawns for that knight to outpost with either, so it doesn't even have a hope.
white is already hoping to survive with tactical ideas like this.
You know, I think we can also point out that there's no pawns in the center. The d file and the e file are completely open. This is what an open position means usually. And so bishop pair loves an open position, and there is no pawns in the center, so bishop pair loves that.
Absolutely. Maybe he could have managed to find some way to keep the bishop pair, but instead, John just went for takes, and bishop d5. Yes, I understand that the bishop is still stronger than the knight, but now the advantage is not as big as it was before because it's important to keep the bishop pair to control the light as well as dark squares. Yes, the bishop is stronger than knight, as you said, but there's also one limitation for the bishop. So now black is left with the light square bishop. So now he will feel uncomfortable on the dark squares. Imagine white gets this, then uh, I'm not saying white is better, but he could maybe make it a fortress or somehow try to hold this game. But with the bishop of dark color, it would have been difficult for white to hold this compared to the current position. But looks like somehow still black managed to win this.
Yeah, and Mitch actually is showing some positional class here, trading off one of the bishops. So if you're fighting against the bishop pair, you definitely want to trade your one bishop for the other bishop if you can. And you can even do that way earlier in the middle game. A lot of times, opponent gets a bishop pair, and the other side will just be trying to trade bishops, and the other side will try to avoid that bishop trade to keep their bishop pair. So
Yes, I mean, if you don't have bishop pair, just try to trade them, and if you have, just try to keep them. So king got to d5 and bishop c4, king e4 at some point will invade, or bishop b1 came in, and still there's no king e4. Point to note, there's no fork here. So this is the strength of knight. Knight can always give forks and create blockades.
and the knight can play on both colors, so that is something that can matter in some positions.
So that's a strength that knight can play on both the colors. But at the same time, knight cannot win a tempo. For instance, you play knight d2, trying to kick the bishop. He just goes bishop f5, and now you don't have a move with the knight. You cannot play a waiting move with the knight. Like you just can move the bishop and still claim that, okay, I want to come here. But you cannot do the same with the knight. Once you move the knight, it will always control 8 new squares or whatever, all the new squares. It will not have control on the same squares. So you cannot really make a waiting move to control the same square with the knight. Also, you cannot move the king because then the king enters. And you just lose because king e4 comes in on the next. So he has to play g4. And then, okay, again, the bishop attacks the knight. Now there's no bishop f5, but we have got new weaknesses. So just f5. Now the knight is again got outplayed by the bishop. And okay, now he needs to hope to survive with knight f1 idea. Or takes. But okay, this is also even terrible. And we get the same zugzwang again. h4, h5 is there. a4, some b6 is there. Or b5 also at some point. Maybe s3 or something like knight f1 was necessary and try to survive with some tactical ideas like this. Looks difficult to me. It looks losing only. But white needed to try something like that. g5 is not so great because you simply give a passed pawn to black. And also there's a king e5, king f4. This is just losing. g5 is a huge mistake. Or the final mistake, let's put it like this. But here he got a chance
Yeah, it's getting
with
that
g6.
looks a lot scarier than I thought. I was like, what? Isn't he queening?
And he survived this. It's just simple draw, like he gives you a check. Okay, only option, otherwise you lose. Then you again give a check, or even you can try to play for a win if you want. But okay, even if you just give a check and you capture this, only white has the winning chances.
So what
But
happened?
instead, what happened? But something crazy happened here. White went for this. Okay, queen f5, queen into b7 was the idea. He gave this check and queen f4 came in. Simply, now we cannot really capture because then the queen c1, queen a1 ideas, or maybe he can capture, it's not so big deal. And he's not losing anything. But instead he tried something, maybe he thought he had got a perpetual or something. But now the queen comes in. And still he has got this move. He could have played this. I mean, why not? Just get the pawn and you draw it. But he went king d3. So Bishop definitely needs to work upon his endgame skills. Because he was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but bringing the king here near the king. It's just the wrong way. Just try to get some pawn, try to create a fast pawn. If you go near the king, you will just lose by somehow getting queen exchange by force. That's what happened. And he lost. Probably that was the only way in which white could have lost this. Because everything else just draws. Queen h7, queen a6. You just capture the pawn and you draw the game. You just capture the pawn, you draw the game. So
Well,
here,
rough, but
okay,
that's some good takeaway material to study at home. You can get, and you got to just calculate these 14 variations too. I mean, that honestly seems crazy of me that John allowed Mitch to queen too. That can't
yeah,
have been ideal.
the simple way would have been just simply cooking f4, king g4 and convert it, like not allowing any kind of h5. But after f4, we just allowed h5, and now the problem is this h6, h7 coming. So you have to take the pawn. After you take the pawn, you don't have time to save the bishop. Like white just captures and pushes. And it's a simple draw after
Yeah,
that.
I also don't
But
even want to let the knight take my bishop. Can I just continue to dominate with bishop d5? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just need to save the bishop. The knight is just very, very poor. And now if he moves the knight, you can capture, and also you can play f4, king f5, king g4, like in the game, or just push, or just go king f4, king f3. Uh, or just simply I would have just played like this and capture because bishop d5, sometime you can get king d4 and some counter will this way or that way. Should be losing, of course, but if you can start with king here, it's faster. Like it wins on the spot. So maybe like this would have been better because even let's say uh, he gets king f4. Okay, we have got b5 here, winning on the spot, the pawn. But let's say when you don't need pawns, you can just play like this. But okay, maybe there's king f3 and you will need this b5 break. So yeah, he needs to find the b5 and he's winning. But yes, bishop d5 also wins. Oops. Just serve the bishop and try to win with that. I probably f4 is better way. And again, white is not having good moves. Knight is stuck. Cannot improve further. Let's go to mine in game because there's just 30 seconds left for black here. White looks winning.
yep, they say knight end games are basically like pawn end games, and I'm seeing some extra pawns on white side, so we know what that means.
Yeah, two extra pawns. Clearly winning. 6 seconds for Marion.
Extra pawn in a rook end game, it's like, it's probably draw. But extra pawn in a knight end game, you should be winning that.
Yeah, let's say this from beginning. So it was Queen's Gambit. Decline one.
And we got another
Okay, here,
Carlsbad.
yeah, but this time with the b6 and without Queen c7.
Yeah, I like to call that Carl's Indian because you get the Queen's Indian, but the Carlsbad, good mix.
Again, threatening knight b5. What? Black allowed knight b5 and why did not play this? Come on. So he
Typical.
did play bishop c3.
Yeah, we're
Would have
seeing.
taken and
Look at
gone
all this
like this.
deja vu. We were talking about the Queen C7 and B5 tactics in the other game.
And and here he did blunder. He did play rook e8. Not a blunder, but a positional mistake. And this just
Yeah,
lost, like knight b5, and it's game
yeah,
over.
it's pretty crazy because yeah, queen takes queen, you're X-raying. Get some nice X-ray tactics.
So now black has lost his water, no bishop, no dark square bishop. This is bishop is terrible, and the moment you play a6 or bishop a6, it gets even, okay, bishop a6 just loses on the spot. So you have to play a6 and harm the bishop. And okay, like there are now so many ways, like you play rook c1, rook c8, knight e5, rook d1, or transfer the bishop here or on here. And it's simply better for white if not winning, like a positional advantage for white.
Well, congratulations to Kevin for finding his typical tactic.
Yeah. So takes, and no, he did not find it. He played rook c1 in the game,
Ah,
but he did win the game. So this is like analysis. I was talking like with knight b5 one. He played rook c1, and now again he's threatening. So maybe black understood and captured. Okay, black got a playable position. White is better, but okay. But lots of move got wasted here, like rook e8, and like he played like queen here, here, and to get here eventually. Rook again here, here. So Marin was not really sure about what he's doing or what he was doing there. Okay, but again the same goes with Kevin. Like he plays good moves, makes the right plan, and then again comes back. Now again
they're
he don't know what to do.
they're
Now
maneuvering.
Marin gets a5, and and now okay, generally a3 and like this is played because b5 black gets c5, and now this is quite stable for black d5 c5 with the pawn here. So both the players did make some strategic mistakes. Again, here it was important to take with the pawn, I believe. Because if you take with the knight, then you get a long-term problem with the IQP. And white has got an easy game. G6 blocking knight f5, but then it weakens these guys a lot. Now simply knight comes back, let's say. Yes, it was played. Knight f4. All good for white. Weaknesses. Now maybe just knight d2 and this wins. Okay, or even like this. So g5. Okay, I can understand why this move was played. Like, but I like Kevin's play more so far. He really created all those weaknesses. He really farmed Myrin well in this game, I would say. Really, really well played. Capture, capture, and now just push and save. I think, oh, okay, some small mistakes, but I think a very good game from white side. And and to improve from black, I believe, is not to go queen c7, just play bishop b7, rook e8, rook c8, and try to get knight e4 at some point, or g5 knight e4 at some point. Or there's also another way in which you can achieve the same thing. For instance, you can go knight f8 and try to get knight g6, forcing him with go bishop g3. And then you can capture and go knight e4. But queen c7, this and
Yeah,
this is not good.
as we're seeing in a couple games here, queen c7 can be a bit prone to tactics. We know it's a standard move in a lot of openings though, but it's one of those moves where, yeah, early queen moves in general. If it's in your theory, if it's book, great. If you play con, sure. But if you're just kind of thinking for yourself, you're not sure if it's right or not. I mean, just go for bishop b7. Because
Yeah, a traditional idea.
yeah, we've seen in a couple games here the queen can be a little misplaced on c7 sometimes. It just falls under rook c1 fire, and tactics can happen.
Yeah. So let's move on to the last game from the open section, which was played between Andrew and Sillinger.
All right, he's a b4 main. Let's see.
Oh,
Oh, got it.
a6. No attack
He
on the
hasn't.
pawn this time.
We
e5.
have we haven't talked him out of it yet. He's gonna. He's.
Yeah,
We'll see how long.
but
We'll see how long Andrew mains the Polish. Maybe he's gonna main the Polish all the way to master.
but it worked out. Like he did play b4, and Black did not take advantage of it by playing d5 or e5 or a5. Black did not try to punish it. Black just played its setup, like the Kensington setup, and it really worked out because now White has simply a good game. Like he has got space. No one is attacking this pawn, so psychologically it worked out well. And now look, this is a very good version of Sicilian. Let's put it like this, where you have got all the minor pieces developed. White has not got the d4 or the d5 break here, and simply a very good version of Sicilian instead of saying English.
Yeah.
Let's put it like this
So
because,
it's almost like white is playing Sicilian. You know, reverse
yeah,
colors.
reverse Sicilian. Yeah, yeah, reverse colors. So
Yeah, and
it's
you can see what strong players think like too. For some of the players in the open section, you know, how quickly Nubair recognized that this is a familiar structure that he knows with the black pieces, and it's a good version of it. So, like, how do these strong players memorize all this stuff? It's crazy. How do they know what to do in all these positions? You know, they're recognizing familiar pawn structures, and then they know the typical moves that are attached to that pawn structure.
yeah. I think this things just comes with the practice. The more you play, the more you see chess. The more you see Magnus play, make fun of everyone. Play first move e3, play reverse French, play Sicilians, and So I think if you follow Magnus seriously, you learn a lot because he plays almost all openings from both sides. And so, yeah, it's just great to see him play.
Yeah, it's another good
He's
reason
fine.
to study all sorts of openings, even if it's outside your opening repertoire. You know, if it's an interesting game, always good to understand what's going on because you never know when that structure or similar ideas from that game could appear in your game, even though it's not your opening.
And also a very good positional point from Andrew. The moment he plays 27, he goes e4. Because after this, he can get the bishop. Like Black cannot set the bishop anymore. And if he goes like this, he just gets the bishop with this move. So very, very well alert, a very good point from Andrew. Wow, United fine.
It's pretty strange.
Like I don't understand this. It just capture, right? Like why do you go knight h5? Like you could have just gone knight e8, h6, anything, c6, a6, rook move. Like why do you give
He's
free pawn? Like just like that.
he's upset about blundering his bishop and wants just activity at any cost.
But I understand, but it's white who's getting activity and the checkmate. Like you cannot
Yeah,
still play
yeah,
bishop g4.
it's crazy. So I feel
And white
like
just wins.
yeah, that was just kind of he had a nice positional tactic. But he's just winning the bishop pair. He's not winning the game or anything, so there's no reason to pull out all the stops.
And simply now he's 2 pawns up. And he just plays f4. No need to play a rookie one. Just trying to, improve pieces, get a rook to f1, make double. Okay, he played f5. Maybe he could have first played rook f1. But okay, even f5 is fine. Everything is fine. Like when you have got so winning position, you can do whatever you want. You can capture anything with anything. Just attack the weaknesses. Everything looks poor.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that glorious pawn chain that they had. He had for a moment. He had, you know,
I don't know what this is.
connects three in two directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that
Like
bishop. Look
everything.
at that dark square bishop. Look how terrible that is. It's just
Yeah.
staring at. It's a big pawn on g7.
And yes, that's the point you were making. Like the bishop can stare at the pawn or the knight for so long time, but these guys cannot do anything in return. So they just someone needs to always keep on defining them. And at some point when black will play rook b8, white will just capture and get the d6. And another point I wanted to tell was like, and everything looks perfect in white's position, like the this, but this rook is highly misplaced. Like this is the rook of the head. It's doing nothing. Like the first thing I would have done after exchanging queens was probably, or maybe just capture and play whatever you want, like a4, c5,
Yeah.
whatever.
So
But there's just no point going like this.
yeah, so rook h3 was actually a positional blunder because you're 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 moving your rook to a totally inactive square that now you're going to need to bring it back the same way you brought it. So
And yeah,
it looks active staring at the king, but that bishop's defending h6, and you're happy with that bishop being dead. So it's not like you want to sack on h6 later or something. You want to just let that bishop be dead, go play on the queen side.
yeah, it's good. For example, if you try to keep rook on f3 and g3, it's better when you have got queens on the board. Once the queens are off the board, there is just no point keeping rooks on h3, g3 because you're not gonna really deliver a checkmate without queens. So it makes sense just capture and try to create past one or something when you have a material. And one more thing, after this point, I was surprised that black player took b6. If black takes rook a6, maybe black has got some chance. Not really chance, but some counter play. And because this rook is completely out of the game, if you move the rook comes in. If you capture the rook, then black has got an outside passer, which could be dangerous at some point. So maybe he could have tried rook a6 and some hopes, but instead he took like this. And now there's one rook, so it defends a lot of things. And he also got like this. Now, this is really impossible to explain. Like, why on the earth you would put your rook on the corner?
Yeah, because I think they're both worried. They're both worried about h6 threats. He likes his rook
But
on
what?
h5 because he sees pressure on h6, and then black's seeing, oh, he's pressuring h6. I need to defend h6. So they're both kind of just worried about this kingside attack that's not going to happen. All right, I think we might have some minor technical
Without
issues again with the.
binary,
All right, you were
it's
disconnected for
works.
just a moment, but you're back now.
Yeah, okay. So simply f4, rook h6 happened.
Okay.
King g8, rook g6. Game over. Come on, just play bishop h6 and mating 4. Like this, just this is a simple mating
Yeah.
pattern, guys.
Once
You support the rook, and it's a mate.
you can also do that with a pawn. If you get
Yeah,
any.
even sometimes if it wins, you just play like this. Like a2, okay, I can even play h3. There's no problem at all. I have done this to make my first time now, long back, some 13 years ago. I was
Very
playing
nice.
against, uh, back then he was international master, now he's a grandmaster, Saptarshi Roy. And I had some attack. I was playing with black pieces, and he just got this h pawn going, and I had my king like this. And I literally had to play this king b8, king a7 when he was threatening h6, h7 to get out of the perpetual or to get out of the checks. And I was completely queen down, but I had rooks like this and a guy supporting them, a minor piece supporting them, and I just ended up checkmating just like in the same pattern. So here it's just like one move, but in my game it was like so many moves I had to play and then just go like this. And there was just no difference because no matter you are two queens up or three knights up on the queen side, it doesn't matter if you do not have the safe king. It just checkmates. So ideally you should have not done this. You could have just come back and or attack with the G file open to the G7 weakness and won this. But okay, he played a good game
Yeah,
and B4 worked out well.
and that main four does go to show, you got to just do your puzzle books because a lot of that's pattern recognition. So no one can get
And
around
we do
it
have
for the
one
most
game
part.
going on still.
Eddie versus Michael, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
Complex rook in game like usual for Eddie.
yeah. Maybe let's go back a bit to understand what happened. I believe we left long back around here or something. Yeah, we left it around this point where we said that, okay, if we lose the bishop, maybe some counterplay for white. And probably he lost the pawn at some point. Yes, immediately. Capture, capture, rook e8, some tactics like this, if takes. And white did make a comeback in this game. Why not capture? Am I missing something? Okay, knight g4, rook f5 is there. But I believe still, okay, he can play this move, but he will lose two pieces in that case. Oh, no. So somehow they got liquidated into this endgame, where black is up a pawn, but not clearly winning.
Still
But
looks
okay, this
dangerous.
pawn, rook c2 takes, and okay, rook d6. So this was not played because after you capture everything uh, and go rook b2 or rook a4, white has got this crazy rook d6 move which defends the pawn and attacks b7. So black decides to go back and defends the d6.
So one question here: are those kingside pawns an asset or a weakness at this point? I mean, they're taking a lot of space, but also they're maybe kind of close, could be attacked.
Yeah, this pawn could be attacked, and the moment king got to safety of a d6 pawn, he went down, attacking those weaknesses with g1 or f1. So white tried pushing them, creating some counterplay. And now this is a serious problem. So
So
he goes back and defends it again. And now once the king comes up, white will start feeling better. Black will start feeling better as he gets the king gets the oxygen. And now simply this is there, but then we have got this. Rook e4, interesting play, interesting move. The idea is if you capture everything, there's a king e6 and f6 hangs. So I think a good game so far, and still a lot to watch. Look for in this game between Basil and ED.
should we see how Connor and Ronan finish quick?
Yeah, sure, why not? So they finished with a draw, and we left it around here where no, we left it around here where we're talking about something like D1 would have done the job easier or quickly for black. Instead, he went rook d4, trying to create a fast pawn there. He did manage to push them forward, and then he was making progress. How did it end in a draw suddenly? Just play king g6 here. What's wrong? Maybe he didn't want it rook e5. So he gave a check. And now maybe he is not repeating. He went king f1, thinking that he have a chance here. He did get a pawn, but then if he captures, then there are some ideas with rook h4 and rook h1 checkmate. The problem could be is this, for example, just a funny line. So if you capture, what is the problem? Rook h4, you're threatening a checkmate. You think that, okay, will save after king g1, but now there's simply c2 coming in, or you can even start with knight e2, king moves, capture, capture, and c2, winning for black. As still there's one more pawn left. And it works better with direct c2 because you cannot play rook c4, rook hangs, and same goes for rook c7 as well. So in
Nice.
the game, rook b6 check, and maybe if he wants, he can make a draw, but the king might even go to h5. He ends up playing rook takes pawn, rook h4 played, and he simply captures because now it's a check as well, and he does not want to allow this things. The idea is if rook takes f4, simply rook c6 and trying to hold with, I'll just show. So rook f3, king e2, and now you need to go rook h3, and now simply the pawn connects the contact. But then there's a c2 here. No, it's not working. Yeah, the king is quite far. It's just draw. So I think well played by Adam here. He gets the pawn very professionally, and And okay, it was a draw then, but then Corner what he was doing. This is a bit careless. The pawn hands now. Ah, but he was just in time. Lucky. And now it's a draw by opposition principle. I was wondering if he gets some king g5, king f5, or something like this, trying to triangulate.
So Ronan
Maybe,
even was close to a win at the end almost, huh?
maybe still a draw with the frontal defense. Like you can still even if the position comes like this, you can make a draw with the frontal defense just by giving checks. And if rook king comes in, then the king will also come at some point. Even this is not rook yet, but this move draws, or even this position also draws, or even this position also draws, as given in many rook and game books. So this is called frontal defense, where you just keep on giving checks once the king comes up. So okay, they just traded pieces and played until it was a stalemate, I believe. Yes.
Looks like Connor won the tournament, but very well fought by Ronan. Nice fight back. Because looks like Connor was dead winning early on in that game, and Ronan really put all his effort in for the defensive, and Connor ended up blundering, and he came back and drew. So, and even maybe
Wait,
had.
what? Sorry, but this is something crazy happened here. They traded rooks, and Basil is saying that he has got some chance with king c5, king b6. So king f6, king c5, king e5, king b6, f5, king into b7, f4, and wow, it's
Well,
simultaneous queen
well,
after king g7.
can't we just play b6 though?
Yeah, he did play b6, but now still the king goes in, and this is how I think he miscalculated or something, because after this, simply f5 is now faster.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Takes
So
f4, and
way over ambitious by
just
Michael.
one more shot.
Well,
Just one more
I
shot.
feel like the best you're gonna do is draw, not win. But maybe.
No, this is just lost, no? Because now you are one more shorter. F4 king a7 and e queens, and you will be still at b7.
Yeah, it's a knight pawn,
Oh wait,
not a
it's no,
bishop
it's
or.
Kuzmo. Wait, it's simultaneous queen again. F3 b6, F2 b7, F1 b8. Oh, it's a draw. I'm sorry. It's simultaneous queen. I thought we get a tempo with this. Oops. I thought we got a tempo with playing b6 and getting the king out, but not really. This is just a draw. Whatever you. Only blunder you can make here is king a6.
So maybe just a well calculated draw.
Yeah.
But it
This
seems.
draws, this draws, this draws. Okay, it's a draw now officially. F6, B2,
Well, these guys really
B6.
left it all on the board. They were fighting to the last moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw some very fighting games in the premier section, especially tonight. No one taking it too easy in the final round. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I was pretty
Some
impressed by
crazy.
that mate by Robert. That was pretty crazy. So
I would say overall very impressive games. Some were crazy, some of them fighting till the end, and full of entertainment, I guess. I mean, it is something, the final was completely like audience demand, like full of entertainment.
all right, perfect. Well, I think we covered all the games. So I think we will be back next month to cover next month's tournament. So tune in next month. And thank you for all the viewers this month. We appreciate you guys watching. And thanks so much, Nubair, for all your analysis. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye bye.